I know a lot of you will have been told to mono the low end of your songs. But where did this thinking originate from, and is it still relevant today? If we analyze modern music from the world's top artists and eminent engineers, will we find that they're still doing this? Or have things changed? These are big questions with substantial implications for how we engineer our music, and I, for one, am super curious. Let's dive in and get some answers. Recommendations for a fully mono low end originated in vinyl mastering, where excessive bass level or side channel low frequency information could cause problems. The mono bass argument was further promoted by the fact that PA rigs typically have their subs configured in mono, and we're often told that the low end of our songs will sound more powerful, tighter, and more consistent if we just mono it. The process of monoing the low end involved using a high-pass filter on the side channel to filter out low-frequency content. This is sometimes referred to as an elliptical filter. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to refer to that process as hard monoing the low end. Hard monoing the low end has several potential downsides though. First is an increase in peak level. Second is phase smearing. If you're using a non-linear phase filter on the side channel, then you can smear the phase relationship between mid and side right in the critical bass region where phase coherence is so important. The third is that you can experience level loss. If you remove information in the side channel, then overall bass level can drop. Fourth is you can have timbral changes. If there's information that exists that is only in the side channel, which is otherwise known as antiphase content, by removing that, you're actually removing detail and not just level. And the fifth and final thing is you can experience a loss of envelopment. There is perceivable spaciousness in bass, sometimes called bassiousness. And when you strip that out, you lose that, which is potentially something special and interesting in your mix. Assuming the vast majority of you are not making music that's ever going to find its way onto vinyl, is the hard mono approach still valid? Without a doubt, the bottom end of your song needs to be robust, and you need to make sure that it's going to translate well to all of the various playback destinations that your listeners might be using. But the hard mono approach might be a bit too heavy-handed for modern music, especially considering the percentage of people that are listening on headphones and full stereo playback systems. The genre of music where people are told the most strongly to mono the low end, I think, is electronic music, ostensibly because all PAs have the subs configured in mono, and it'll just sound better that way. So we're going to actually take a look at real-world examples. This is not an exhaustive analysis video, but I am going to pull up some songs that I feel are some of the most prominent and successful examples in the genre, and we're going to see what's going on down in the bottom end. Let me first walk you through how I've done this analysis so you can follow along or analyze songs on your own if you want to. We've got RX11 Audio Editor open, and I've got one of the songs out of my own catalog loaded in here. And what you do is you start off by going to the mixing module, and you will choose the preset, MS Encoder Decoder. Then click Render. You can see we have the mid channel on one side and the side channel on the other. In order to visualize this correctly, we're going to go up to the View menu and change our channel mode to mid-side. Then you can go down to the spectrum, pop that open, and it will display the mid-channel information in a light gray and the side channel information in blue. And that's averaged over the entire song. If you want to, you can make a specific time range selection, but this is a very useful view to be able to see the amount of side channel content in different frequency ranges. So if we take a look down here, you can see exactly what's going on. There's some quite prominent side channel information down in the bottom end. Now let's take a look at the exact same song, but with a side channel high-pass filter at 18 dB per octave at 120 Hertz. This would be pretty typical of programs like Ableton Live you see, where there's a bass mono feature in the utility device. It's exactly what's going on. Note the dramatic difference between the spectrums. You can see that low frequency roll off in the side channel. So that's what it looks like when you have a hard mono low end. Now let's go ahead and see what some of the most commercially successful songs in the industry are doing now that we've got the frame of reference for the analysis. This is Rumble by Skrillex and Fred Again, featuring Flowdan. It won the 2024 Grammy for Best Electronic/Dance Recording, and it was mastered by Luca Pratolesi from Studio DMI in Las Vegas. Let's take a look at the spectrum. Now look closely at the bottom end and let me know which one of these does it resemble most. The version without the mono low end, or the version with the mono low end? You can see very clearly that the bottom end of this song has not been hard monoed. Next up is Badadan by Chase and Status, and this one is arguably one of the top drum and bass songs, if not the most anthematic banger of a drum and bass song from the last couple of years. So much so that it's inspired people on Instagram to create Badadan counters. I saw somebody who was filming a live clip at a show and said, "This is my 357th Badadan." They were literally counting the number of times they saw it in sets. This one is a huge song, very influential song in the genre. Let's take a look at which it resembles more. There's the hard mono low end. There's Badadan. Clearly, you can see there is a lot more side channel, low frequency information extending all the way down to 30 Hertz. Okay, here's my final example. Anyone who follows the drum and bass genre will absolutely recognize the names Mefuse and Camo and Crooked. This song, You, is the last one that we'll analyze. Let's take a look at the spectrum. You spotting a trend here? I am. Take a look at that versus the two spectrums in the reference. There is a lot of very prominent side channel information all the way down in the bottom end, extending to 30 Hertz. If you're wondering why these artists and engineers are leaving some width in the bass and sub-frequency ranges, you might be interested in some of the research on the matter. It was previously thought that we couldn't perceive directionality or width in low frequency ranges, but that's been discovered to be untrue. Newer research supports that the human auditory system is capable of both spatially locating and perceiving width in low frequency ranges. This paper by David Griesinger describes the exact mechanism of spatial detection at low frequencies. Stereo bass isn't just about our ability to perceive the apparent location or direction of a sound or instrument. It's also about a sense of spaciousness or dimension. So maybe let's not call it stereo bass anymore. I prefer a term coined by Todd Welty, an acoustician at Harman, basiciousness. Basiciousness is a sense of envelopment, immersiveness, dimension, or spaciousness at low frequencies. Not only can you perceive basiciousness, there's research which indicates that listeners actually prefer it. There's a Journal of the Audio Engineering Society paper called Near-Field Crosstalk Increases Listener Preference for Headphone-Reproduced Stereophonic Imagery. That's a mouthful. What they did is they tested listener preference for stereo bass using a variety of techniques. Listeners clearly preferred this processing, which created a sense of width and spaciousness in the low end to both the unprocessed signal and other versions of the processed signal which did not involve these low-frequency effects. What's more, this is one of the very few studies that's actually used modern music in its tests, including hip-hop, dance, and electronic, in addition to the normal array of genres. I wanted to loop in some of the other engineers that I know and see what they thought about this topic. So I had a great chat with Timofey Reznikov, who's the engineer for David Guetta. He's also worked with Armin van Buuren. And this is what Timofey had to say. The goal is not to flatten the stereo field, but to control it. Width should come from good arrangement and sound design, not post-processing alone. And unless there's a technical problem, I would avoid hard stereo cuts on the master. So Timofey isn't a fan of the hard mono approach either, and he's doing some of the most popular and successful masters in the world. For this section, I really want to encourage you to use full range headphones or ensure that your monitoring system is stereo full range. If, for example, you have a single subwoofer, then the entire low end of your monitoring system will already be forced to mono, and you won't even hear what you're missing. Let's start by giving the demo track a quick listen. So you can see in Insight that it's wide, it's correlating, but it's really quite wide. So let's start off with what not to do, which is the hard mono approach. So that would look a little something like this. You can take Ozone and bring in an equalizer module, put it into mid-side mode, and select the side channel. And then you can pop in a high-pass filter that's only on the side channel. You can adjust the slope of that filter, and then let's set it at 120 Hertz. Now, remember when I said earlier, under one of the drawbacks of the hard mono process, that there could be a level increase? We'll take a look at that. This track has been mastered with a 0.2 dB margin, so it's well under 0 dBFS. And yet, when we instantiate the side channel high pass filter, we're getting overs of 1.2 and 1 dB on the channels respectively. It's kind of counterintuitive how filtering out information could create a level increase, but it does. And here's the proof. Now I want you to really zero in on what's happening in the bottom end. So I'm going to use Neutron after Ozone. And what Neutron has in place is just a 300 Hertz low pass filter on it. Interesting, hey? I mean, to me, that's night and day. You really hear a sense of dimension in the bottom end that goes completely away. And to me, it sounds rather sterile. That's the approach of what has been done a lot and what I don't recommend. Let's take a look at what another approach might look like. Let me show you two techniques that I think are better. I would put these under the umbrella of right-sizing the low end versus just eliminating it in the side channel. The first one is really simple and straightforward. You would just take your high-pass EQ and instead turn it into a shelf. And then you could simply attenuate that shelf to rein in the level of the side channel. Let's have a listen. Now there's a slightly more advanced way to do this, and if you have Ozone, this is the perfect tool for the job. So we would get rid of the equalizer module and instead instantiate the imager. So let's put in 3 different bands. We can center one on 80, the next one at 150, and the final one at 2K. And we can have a listen and dial in each frequency range individually. What's more, I talked earlier about how one of the drawbacks of just hard monoing the low end is a loss of dimension or detail that might exist in the side channel antiphase content. Well, Ozone has a wonderful feature called Recover Sides. And what this allows us to do is recapture that information and add it back in a way that you're hearing that in the mono version or in the center channel. And this is available to you only when you've reduced one of the band's widths. So let's have a listen to using the Recover Sides feature. Hard monoing the low end appears to be a practice that's being phased out and clearly isn't being followed by the industry's most experienced engineers and the top artists in modern genres. This holds true even for electronic dance and bass music that will most certainly be played on PAs with mono subs. A more current practice is to use cutting-edge tools to be able to right-size the width of key frequency ranges and retain a bit of that sense of spaciousness and dimension that is present when you have nice low-level, highly correlating and controlled side-channel low-frequency information. That's all for this one. I hope I've left you with some food for thought around how you engineer your music or that of your clients. As always, I'd love to hear from you and what you thought about this topic and all the facets of the discussion around bass width. Drop me a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.